what is your strategy for launching a new supplement in a category with 20 to 8K review ratings? My strategy is always going to be find where your product fits in the market first. And so with that strategy, it is very helpful to find like products and do a reverse ASIN search to see where they are ranking, because the way that ranking works on Amazon, there's a lot of nuance and detail and things that go into it. However, that being said, one of the biggest things is sales and sales velocity. So you can be very, very confident that if you go and you search a keyword on Amazon and the products that come up are very similar to yours or very like yours, that shoppers are using that search term to find and then purchase products that look like yours. And so that's a really good gauge. Honestly, to this day, when I'm doing keyword research, if I am unsure if a keyword is relevant to my product, I will go through and I will manually search it on Amazon. Still do that to this day. I don't think that's going to change. If you read any of Amazon's literature in terms of like their documentation for their advertising, which again, I still read their documentation, it's a really great way to understand sort of like the ins and outs of things. One of the things that they say is like, hey, if you're trying to get impressions, the algorithm has to think that you're relevant for the keyword. That's one of sort of their fail-safes. That's why you're never going to see like somebody advertising socks show up on running sneakers. It's because that doesn't create a good customer experience. So they're interested in you showing up where your shoppers are looking for you. And so you want to go through and you want to QA that. Great way to do it. So there's amazing tools out there. Helium 10, Jungle Scout, Viral Launch is another OG one that you can use. Just using Amazon suggested keywords is a really good tip. Now, I had my good friend Dustin from BTR or Better Media join last week. We did a whole thing on bids, which if you're trying to understand bid adjustments, I definitely recommend going and checking that out. And also we have some really cool insights coming out hopefully pretty shortly. Still working on them. But he was saying like inside of Seller Central, if you go through and see like suggested keywords, those are somewhat loosely relevant. So you definitely want to look at them very closely. However, his insight was that if you have a vendor account, vendor accounts tend to have a much better, more curated suggested keyword list. So that might be something to look into. Other very interesting tools that are free from Amazon is there's something called Product Opportunity Explorer. If you haven't dug around in there, definitely recommend you do that as well. That will also sort of give you some like keywords and maybe some top products. Basically what I'm saying is like figure out what your product fits in the market and then dig into that. Now, it looks like you were already asking about sort of the keyword research tool. So what you can do is you can take that research and then sort of plug it into a tool, because the second thing you want to do is like, hey, what kind of budgets can I afford? That's the second thing you want to curate that list through. So you take your list of relevant keywords and you say, okay, which of these have crazy high cost per clicks? Which of these have a lot of really crazy competitors? And how many can I afford? And when it comes to figuring out your launch list of keywords, I would highly recommend, even if you only had 10 keywords that you're launching on, just for now, I'm not saying you can't add any more. I would much prefer you have 5 or 10 keywords that you can adequately spread your budget across and be able to get enough clicks to identify if they really work or not. And then versus trying to launch on like 50 or 20 keywords and your budget is spent within the first couple of hours and you just don't have any data. Really what you're looking for in data. And the last couple tips I'll give you is when it comes to launching, I would focus in on sponsored products in the beginning, especially if you have like a very limited budget and it's more of a competitive category. There's more ad inventory for budgets. Product pages can work pretty well in supplements. So maybe you find some products. Another good list here, again, you want to be super curated. The more limited your budget, the more specific and curated you want your keyword list to be. And so I would say one really good tactic in terms of launching using product targeting is figure out which products or which competitors that you feel like you have a strategic advantage over, being like, you know, better price point, maybe your images are better. There's some way you think you can compete that are also ranked somewhere on the first page for some of your main keywords, or at least the keywords that you've identified you want to go after. That's a really good strategy, again, because there's going to be less of those. So you can get like really hyper specific. I would run that. You can stick with the sponsored product ads. We typically focus in on exact match in the beginning. If you're struggling to get impressions with exact match, you might test phrase match. After your product is well indexed, you can add in phrase and broad, and auto campaigns work really well here. Other thing that I will tell you is in supplements, the most difficult thing is that testing is really, really costly because the cost per clicks are so high. And so what you can do is we call them frequent micro tests. is the way that we run it. And so what we'll do is we'll say, okay, so here's a subset of like 5 keywords. Conversion rates tend to be pretty high in supplements. You definitely want to benchmark against your own conversion rates. But I would say, okay, if I have a 10% conversion rate, it takes me 10 clicks on average, because 10 clicks can get really, really costly in supplements. If I have like $2 bids, right, that's 20 bucks already. And so you want to just like test it and be like, okay, does this or does this not work? You know, turn it down as rapidly as you can, and then just start testing the next one. So instead of having a group of say like 10 keywords or 20, 50 keywords that you're just trying to spread your budget across, you're getting a couple clicks here, a couple clicks there, you can't really validate it. You kind of get stuck in that cycle. So you say, all right, here's a honed in limited amount of tests, and we're just going to run like really frequent tests to determine, you know, as soon as we've determined something, then we move on to the next group. That's the other tactic we found super helpful.